Hello everyone and welcome to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill. It's time to preview the French Open. The only difference is you can't see my face. That's going to be how this works because I either have the ability to show you graphics, which I need for a preview, or show my face, but I cannot do both. So for this kind of video, I'll just be showing you graphics and you won't see my face. So for all of those who only watch this show to see, my handsomeness and my smile and my good looks, I apologize to those people. I'm sure there are a lot of them out there, so you can just click off the video right now. But so that's how we're going to do it. Okay, I want to start with, and we're going to go quarter by quarter, just as we always do, but I want to start talking about the French Open in general and what kind of players usually succeed at the French Open, what kind of players generally fail at the French Open, and then we'll take a final look at the French Open power rankings before we get into the quarters. So this is going to be very exciting. So I just want to say before we get started, what I look for in a player built for success at the French Open. I think that there are three main bullet points: consistency, power, and fitness. On a slow clay court and in best of five outdoors, I think that those are the three most important factors. So because it's hard to find quick, easy offense, because it's hard to get a lot of cheap, easy points from the serve, I think consistency becomes a lot more important. And that unforced error count and keeping that low becomes a lot more important. The second part is over the course of 2 weeks, and because it's best of five and because you're playing longer rallies, fitness becomes more important. So I don't think that a player who's not as fit has as good a chance at the French Open as they do at Wimbledon. I think a player who has better racket skills and better serve and more, maybe more of a net game and good flat weapons, those kind of players might have a good chance at Wimbledon, but not as good a chance at the French Open because they don't have the fitness to hang back and play long baseline rallies over the course of best of five sets. And the third thing is power, because I think mainly if you'd like to generate offense on the red clay, well, that requires, in a lot of cases, some power. And I'm speaking in general terms. And a player like I don't know, David Goffin can be successful on clay, at least not this year, but in the past, he can be successful on clay without that kind of power. So it is possible to not fit into this box, but I thought that it would be helpful to get started just by kind of laying out some groundwork. And by the way, you look at Rafael Nadal, who's dominated this tournament, who's only lost twice since he started playing this tournament in, was it 2005 or 2004? Nadal really kind of embodies those three attributes in a lot of ways. And there's so much more to Rafa, but still, fitness, consistency, and power are, I would say, A+, when it comes to Rafa Nadal. A player like Dominic Thiem, who has also found more success at the French Open than he has at other tournaments, although the U.S. Open plays kind of similar now to the French Open. Thiem has unbelievable fitness and unbelievable power, and now he's starting to develop his consistency a little bit more. Djokovic is a little bit more unconventional. I would say Roger Federer is hurt in the power department, and that's part of the reason why his offense isn't quite as potent on the clay. And in the consistency department, he's a little bit lower than the others. But also he kind of fits into the category of a player who kind of can bend those rules and still have great clay court success, which, as I've pointed out in the past, Roger Federer, of course, has had great clay court success, just hasn't been able to get over the hump of Rafa Nadal over the course of his career. So I wanted to start with kind of that little diatribe. And let's get into the French Open power rankings. There's actually no change. Right now, Lyon going on and Geneva going on. I probably say Lyon like such an American. Lyon, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, Those two tournaments going on. Zverev is having a nice run in Lyon. He's still, I believe, alive, unless I haven't checked the results. I don't think he's played yet today, but that's important. But that's not going to move him in the power rankings. Who else is playing? I don't know. But the point is, nothing crazy happening. So the power rankings are the same as they were last week. So we'll just rehash. It's Djokovic number 1, Nadal number 2, Dominic Thiem number 3, Federer number 4, Tsitsipas number 5, Zverev number 6, Fognini, Cecchinato, Schwartzman, and Del Potro. I feel like this is broken down into 3 tiers. The top 3, Djokovic, Nadal, and Thiem. It would not be at all surprising if one of those 3 won the French Open. Then I think you have tier 2, Federer and Tsitsipas. That's tier 2. Federer and Tsitsipas, it would be surprising if either of them won the French Open, I think. It would be, but I would say completely plausible. Then after that, it's really hard to imagine Zverev, Fognini, Cecchinato, Schwartzman, and Del Potro winning the French Open. Very difficult to imagine. So not difficult to imagine Federer or Tsitsipas, but it would feel like a big upset. Team Nadal, Djokovic, all would seem okay. That's not that surprising. And that's kind of the breakdown. A couple of people who have been in the French Open power rankings. I've been doing this for a couple of months now. Wawrinka was in, now he's not. Felix Auger-Aliassime after Monte Carlo. He spent some time in the French Open power rankings. Who else? Marin Cilic started in the French Open power rankings. So we've had some movement. And then Del Potro, he just recently got in. Schwartzman has been in and out. Cecchinato in and out. And Fognini started really kind of off my radar. And I know he's a good clay court player, but hadn't really had the success that he would need to be in the top 10. But Fognini at number 7, a great honor, a great accomplishment for Fabio Fognini inside the Monday Match Analysis French Open Power Rankings. And before I move on, I just want to remind everyone, the French Open Power Rankings are not predictive, they are reactive. So even if, like, what I'm saying is basically they're kind of purely based on current form and past results. I'm not really doing any anticipating of future results in the French Open Power Rankings. What I'm about to do, though, is just that, and do some anticipation of future results and work through these quarters. My aim always, when I'm doing this, is to get a good understanding of the landscape of this tournament and hopefully draw out some good discussion. We'll start with the number 1 seed, Novak Djokovic's quarter. The top seeds, Djokovic, Zverev, Fognini, Coric, Bautista Agut, and Shapovalov. So the first thing you look at is, well, who is the top seed in the quarter? And Djokovic gets Sasha Zverev. That is a very good thing for Novak Djokovic. Djokovic will be very happy for Sasha Zverev to be his top seed. And I don't really feel like Zverev is going to make it all the way to Novak Djokovic in the quarterfinals. Of course, he has the ability to do it, but we'll see. I have Zverev losing to Dusan Lajovic, who I think, because Zverev doesn't have great variation, I feel like that might play right into the hands of Lajovic, who really likes rhythm. He's a pure ball striker, and I think if Zverev kind of gets into for lack of a better term, a slugfest with Lajovic from the back, and doesn't look to mix it up very much and make Lajovic uncomfortable, I think we can see Zverev struggle in this matchup. Fognini is one guy who Djokovic probably didn't want in his quarter. Obviously, Fognini's had the best clay court season of his career, but it is worth mentioning it's been 8 years since Fognini has even been in a French Open quarterfinal. I do, however, anticipate that changing. I think Fognini gets back to the French Open quarterfinals in this quarter. But then you kind of look at the matchup and, well, players who look to play offensive tennis against Djokovic are often in for kind of rude awakenings, especially this season. His defense and his movement has been so good. And he really makes you play so many extra balls and hits with such great depth that a player like Fognini, who doesn't exactly want to play kind of the grinded out style that's given Djokovic some trouble this year, I think it's a pretty good matchup for Djokovic, although Fognini has the ability to kind of take the racket out of your hands. But with Djokovic's defense, I think that Fognini, a lot of what he does so well can be neutralized. Borna Coric is a player who kind of lacks in the power department, in my opinion, which I think makes him not best suited for clay, although he does have really good fitness and does have some decent consistency. Almost beat Roger Federer in Rome. Won more points than Roger Federer in that match in Rome. So Coric is a guy who could be threatening. Bautista Agut, the Spaniard, you would think that he would be better on clay than he actually is. But I think he likes low bouncing, and he doesn't hit with a lot of topspin, which isn't very good on clay. I think players can get it outside of his strike zone, especially on the forehand side with the high bounce on clay, and that can give Bautista Agut some trouble. Great consistency, great fitness, just not very good stroke mechanics for clay, and has some trouble creating offense. Wouldn't be a problem for Djokovic. And then you have Denis Shapovalov, who's, we've talked about it, but not a natural mover and doesn't have the consistency necessary for success on clay. So I'm just going to take a look at this quarter and pull it up on my screen here so I know I don't miss anything. The dark horse, Jaume Munar, he is very close to Novak Djokovic. I don't like to pick a dark horse that's close to someone who I don't think is going to lose, because then, of course, they're not really a dark horse. Just to remind everyone, the rule for dark horse is it needs to be a player who's not seeded, who I feel could make a run to the fourth round. Now, Munar kind of doesn't entirely fit into that because he would draw Novak Djokovic in round 3, but Djokovic will need to bring it, because I know that Munar won't back down mentally from that matchup. He's a fiery competitor, a fierce competitor, so I don't anticipate that Munar would kind of lay down. I think that he would challenge Djokovic and at least be up to task when it comes to competing and believing that he can win that matchup. Upset alert, Shapovalov. Let's see what we got here for Shapovalov. I don't always have all of this committed to memory, so let's see who I have him losing to. Oh, first round, he draws Jan-Lennard Struff. I think that's a tough matchup. That should be very, very short rallies. I would say that won't really resemble a clay court match, and it's going to be very tight margins. So in the big moments, whoever can avoid those lapses and those patches of unforced errors, I think will win this match. But I think Struff will be right in that match. I see that as kind of a 50-50 match for Shapovalov. So I got Dennis on upset alert in the first round. Early popcorn. Oh, whoa. I've just received word that Nick Kyrgios has withdrawn from Roland Garros. So Cam Norrie, who I had winning this matchup against Nick Kyrgios in the first round, will not be facing Nick Kyrgios. Cam Norrie will be playing a lucky loser. So I'm not sure why Kyrgios has withdrawn. I hope he's okay. I haven't actually talked about Kyrgios. He's made headlines. He was obviously defaulted in, was it Rome? Anyway, he was defaulted for throwing the chair, and he had that interview with Ben Rothenberg where he was honest to an extent I don't know that we've ever seen out of any tennis player. Since maybe John McEnroe said that Brad Gilbert is like a caveman who found a tennis racket. But other than that, I can't really think of a player putting so many guys on blast like Nick Kyrgios did. All in all, what I'll say about this is I hope Kyrgios is okay mentally, because obviously in the last week or so, he's been incredibly volatile. I still don't think it's bad for tennis, but I hope he's all right. He's withdrawn out of the first round, so no early popcorn. Let me take one quick look. Coric, have him into the fourth round. Radu Albot into the third round. Of course, Munar. I have him beating Gilles Simon in the second round, so that match could be on Chatelet or Suzanne Lenglen, and I have Munar coming through that. Fanini against Bautista Agut. I have Fanini and Lajovic over Zverev in this quarter. Let's move it along. The number 4 seed, Dominic Thiem's quarter. Before I even get started here, I want to make a quick point. As I said, I think the breakdown is that there are 3 major contenders in this tournament. Thiem, Nadal, Djokovic. It is a loss for Djokovic that he's in Thiem's half. I think that whichever player was in Thiem's half is at a major disadvantage for the semifinal, for the potential semifinal. Now, nothing's set in stone. Crazy things happen, but I think that's a pretty big deal. So all in all, if I'm assessing Djokovic's draw, I don't think it's all that bad. I think it's pretty much what you can expect, close to average as far as draws are concerned, but he draws Dominic Thiem. So it's a good quarter, but it's a bad thing that Thiem's in his half. Dominic Thiem's quarter features Juan Martín del Potro, Karen Khachanov, Gael Monfils, Luca Pouille, Fernando Verdasco, and Felix Auger-Aliassime. Del Potro coming off injury. I'll get into him in a moment. I think Del Potro got a terrible draw for being a top 8 seed. Then you have Karen Khachanov, who is struggling immensely, not stringing together wins at all. He's a number 11 seed here in Paris. Gael Monfils also coming from time off with an Achilles injury, and since he's returned, he had an incredible February. Played 2 tournaments in February, Sofia, Rotterdam, what was the third one? I can't remember. Oh, Dubai. In all 3 of those tournaments, Monfils made semifinal runs or further. Then he got injured. Since coming onto clay, he hasn't really been able to build any momentum, but I still feel like Monfils is in a place where he's super focused. Luca Pouille, the highest seeded Frenchman. No, sorry, Monfils is. I don't know. I just talked about Monfils. Luca Pouille, though, another hometown favorite. Fernando Verdasco, always dangerous. He's a guy, again, his power, his forehand, major factors on the clay. Anyone with a big forehand and anyone who enjoys running around their forehand, clay will always give you more time to create more forehands. And then Felix Auger-Aliassime, his first time being seeded at a major. Get used to it, folks. It's going to happen more and more and more. So as far as Thiem's quarter goes, in general terms, I think Del Potro is a good highest seed for Thiem. Khachanov, Monfils, Pouille, nothing overly scary. I would say Verdasco and Auger-Aliassime are tough 20 through 30 seeds, some of the toughest in the draw. So let's take a look at how they stack up. Aliassime is on Del Potro's side, so that's really more of a Juan Martín Del Potro issue. And then Verdasco would have to get through Zummer and Monfils before potentially facing Dominic Thiem. So it's a good chance that Monfils can help Thiem avoid Verdasco anyway. And as far as that matchup goes, again, like I'll have my eye on Monfils. I wouldn't want him in my quarter because of the focus that he showed in February. But again, he has not looked overly threatening. My dark horse is Martin Klizan. He's a very crafty player on clay. Has put together some really good results on the surface. Has a good winning percentage. It's his favorite surface. Klizan draws Mikhail Kukushkin in the first round, very winnable. Then Luca Pouille, likely in the second round. I think a winnable match for him there, and I have that down as an upset. Pouille, since making the semifinals in Australia, hasn't really been able to put together much. Again, I like Klizan on this surface. Heavy topspin on the forehand, heavy variation on the backhand, good lefty serve that pulls players out wide. And then the reason I really have Klizan as a dark horse is then he could face whoever comes out of Karen Khachanov's section. And we know how vulnerable Khachanov has been. All of a sudden, you could see Martin Klizan, if this all goes down, in as far as the fourth round. So that's my dark horse here. It'll be very interesting to see what Auger-Aliassime and Del Potro do in their little section. I want to get into why I think Del Potro has such a difficult quarter. I didn't want to put Del Potro on upset alert. I've done it the last 3 tournaments, and or the last 2 at least. And in Rome, I was wrong. So was I. I was wrong about pretty much everything in Rome. But in Rome, I was wrong to do it because he made it all the way to Djokovic in the quarters. But the reason I'm putting him right back there is because he has Nicolas Jarry in the first round, definitely a top 40 player in the world on clay. Then he has Mackie McDonald or Nishioka, the winner of that match, in the second round. Both guys who are quick, consistent, will put a lot of balls in the court. I wouldn't want to play either of them. As early as the second round for a top 8 seed, I'd say they're both top 50 players. Then Ivo Karlovic, Felix Auger-Aliassime in the third round. Karlovic can really shrink the margins, and Auger-Aliassime, we know how dangerous he can be. So I think that is really bad luck for a top 8 seed to have round 1, round 2, round 3 all look that difficult. So a tough draw for Del Potro, and that's why I don't know if he'll make it all the way to Dominic Thiem. Early popcorn matchup, Monfils and Mannarino. I think that this is going to be the match where we see what Monfils is going to be made of, because this is the kind of matchup that in the past I think we'd see Monfils play a very long, taxing, physical match against a player who puts a lot of balls in the court. Mannarino is probably the biggest pusher on tour, at least on top, and that's kind of it's a derogatory term, and it's a rare label at this high a level, but I'd say that Mannarino, if you're going to call anyone a pusher, it's him. And what Monfils tends to do against pushers is he pushes back. For some reason, he fails to use his offensive repertoire. So let's see if Monfils and his maturity curve will show in this round 2 matchup, which will probably be on Chatrier. Against a fellow Frenchman. Let's see if Monfils can make easy work of a guy who's going to do a lot of running, who's going to put a lot of balls in the court, and is going to try to make Monfils work really hard. I do have Dominic Thiem, of course, coming out of this quarter, though. Nothing overly threatening, and this guy, plain and simple, is up there with Djokovic and Nadal on clay right now over the last 3 months. Doesn't mean he can beat them second weekend in Paris, but he's been playing at a level that's comparable to theirs. I don't think that would be difficult to argue. Roger Federer's quarter, the number 3 seed, back playing the French for the first time since 2015. This is exciting. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to add a lot to the excitement and the buzz at this tournament. So I think that's a win for everyone. His seeds: Tsitsipas, Marin Cilic, Marco Cecchinato, Diego Schwartzman, and Stan Wawrinka. Let's get into Federer's path a little bit. I think it's a pretty difficult one. In the first round, you have Sonego, who made a good run in Monte Carlo, so he's a competent first-round matchup. Second round, Casper Ruud is a young star who's going to have a lot of success on clay in his future, or Berrettini, who will be obviously favored to reach the second round. And Berrettini has so much firepower on this surface. Big forehand, big serve. That's a really tough matchup in the second round. Then you have Schwartzman and Cecchinato, both top 10 in my French Open power rankings. Both very difficult. And then Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals. And remember, Tsitsipas is in that same tier as Roger Federer, in my opinion, as one of the players. Definitely, I would say at least this. Tsitsipas is the best player outside the top 4 seeds here at the French Open. So Federer has the toughest quarter, or if not the toughest quarter, at least the toughest path. I think he might get a little worn out. He's had a pretty good clay court season, and the fact that I don't think he's going to feel much pressure will definitely make him dangerous. We know how that freewheeling mindset, if Federer can harness that mindset, we know how dangerous he can be. But I feel like this is still a surface where if someone puts a lot of balls in the court, and if Federer's off, if Federer's having a day where his forehand's not firing, he's making a lot of errors, he's less likely to get through it with his serve, and more likely to be upset. There's a lot of players here who can beat Federer if Federer's having an off day. Ultimately, I do have Federer making the quarterfinals, but I have Tsitsipas coming through. I think it's a little bit more likely that Tsitsipas actually makes it as far as the quarterfinals. I think Federer might be a little bit vulnerable. It'll be an interesting matchup, and I don't want to get too much into it until it happened, but my gut is that Federer's that Federer's going to have a difficult time. I hope I'm wrong, or I hope at least he gets the Tsitsipas, because I at least want to see that matchup. Dark horse is Christian Garin. He's been so good this entire clay court season. He's won so many matches. Defense and consistency are his strongest attributes. He's got a fair amount of power off the forehand side as well. So Garin, let's take a look at who will have the pleasure of facing Garin, or Garin. I think most people just say Garin. Riley Opelka in the first round, and then Stan Wawrinka, who I have Garin beating Stan Wawrinka, who hasn't found the consistency that he needs to be successful on this surface. Grigor Dimitrov, Marin Cilic, also in this quarter. That's the second round early popcorn matchup. I have Dimitrov winning that. Dimitrov is just more consistent than Cilic, and I think that will pay dividends in that matchup. Cilic struggling, probably not at full health. Upset alert is Stan Wawrinka, but also I think Dimitrov beats Marin Cilic. Tough quarter for Federer. Cecchinato, Schwartzman, Tsitsipas, all excellent in this quarter. He got the worst high seed, and he probably got the worst fourth round possibilities of any of the top seeds. Finally, Rafa Nadal. His top seeds are Kei Nishikori, Daniil Medvedev, Nicolas Basilashvili, Guido Pella, and David Goffin. Now again, I feel like Nadal was pretty fortunate here. If you look at Rafa's path, he's pretty much dominated on clay everyone who he could face. In the first 2 rounds, he'll get qualifiers, and I'm not going to write that off as, oh, okay, that's an easy first and second round. You know how I feel about qualifiers. They're not easy. But after that, David Goffin, who's had no success, never taken a set off of Nadal on clay. Guido Pella, despite his clay court prowess, the fellow lefty, Nadal has not been a good matchup for him at all. He was destroyed by Nadal in the first round of the French last year. He's never won a set on clay off Nadal. If Pella loses to Basilashvili, well, Rafa Nadal has absolutely embarrassed Basilashvili on clay, and he's never taken a set. And then if you go as far as the quarterfinals, he's never met Daniil Medvedev, who I have beating Kei Nishikori in this quarter. But if Nishikori wins that matchup, Nishikori has only won 1 set out of 8 against Rafa Nadal on clay. Nadal has dominated everyone in his quarter already. And with his forehand firing, with him finding that range offensively, how he's hit his backhand ever since after Barcelona. So I would say ever since Madrid, he started to hit his backhand better. And then in Rome, I feel like he found his forehand. He finally found the offensive tennis that he needed to in Rome. I think Nadal blazes through. Plus, he avoided Dominic Thiem. So I think it's a lot more likely that Nadal reaches the final than it is that Novak Djokovic reaches the final, just based on probability and the fact that Djokovic needs to play Dominic Thiem. Likely, Djokovic will need to go through Dominic Thiem to make the final, and Nadal won't. That's a huge advantage. When it comes to who is a tougher quarter, it really shouldn't matter. Djokovic has not that tough a quarter. Nadal has not that tough a quarter. A lot of what I just said for the argument of why Nadal's quarter is tough, a lot of that is credit to Rafa being so dominant on this surface, right? I also think that there are some good matchups for Nadal here. But Nadal definitely looks like he's a stronger candidate to get to the final than Djokovic is. Here's the thing. As of now, I think Djokovic, because I have him getting to the final anyways, once he gets there, I do like Djokovic against Rafa right now. What I always say, and you guys always want me to talk when it comes to this part, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about previewing a matchup that might not happen. I will say this. In the matchup, their last matchup in Rome when Nadal won, Nadal did some things tactically that were very, very innovative, very, very smart, and could really bother Djokovic and did really bother Djokovic. Hopefully that matchup happens so I can get into those tactical adjustments that Nadal made. I didn't get into them on my phone in my thoughts video because I can't show you guys these tactical adjustments just from my phone. But if this matchup happens, I promise I will get into that. Despite these tactical advancements that Nadal made against Djokovic in the last matchup, I still think that Djokovic will have a counter. I still think that the gap between Djokovic and Nadal that currently exists and has a lot to do with nerves in tight moments, in big moments, in my opinion, that gap will be shrunk by the clay, no doubt, but will not shrink enough to put Nadal on top of this matchup if they play on Sunday in Paris. As for the semifinals, Djokovic beats Thiem in 4 sets. Nadal beats Tsitsipas in 4 sets. That's all I got for now. Monday match analysis this week will be about 30 minutes, hopefully, of nothing but comment response. Again, you won't see my face. I'll just be responding to comments that I'll put on the screen. That will be on Monday. Until then, hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.